All right, let's do some more Bevy. And I think this time we're going to look at a sprite animation. So we have a simple application where we can control a little square if it wants to compile. So we can control the square, it can move around. When it gets close to one of the other squares, they highlight. I can press space and I can like remove a highlighted square. And that's about it. So let's try to put some sprite on top of the square that we control yeah, that's it. I don't know what else I want to say. So let's have a look at this example here. There should be a main function. Here's the main function. Some default plugins, that should be fine. There's some setup, then there's some animation code. There's another update that has this interesting thing that I haven't seen before. Run if. So it has like conditional updates thing to run. So let's look at execute animation first. That takes the time and it takes the animation configuration and a texture atlas. Okay. And the config is the animation configuration, and it adds some time to a timer. And then if that is finished, it increases the animation thing by 1. Okay. And an animation config is like just this kind of thing. And what is the timer? The timer is timer from FPS. Okay, interesting. A timer from FPS is duration from seconds, 1 over this. So this is how long one frame of the animation should last. And what else? Let's look in the setup. Well, let's look at the other thing that this one, trigger animation thing. What is that? Trigger, okay, it's right here. So animation query single mutable. That's interesting. I didn't know you could do this, just get a single thing. So we can even go ahead already and improve our code because we have this player query. We know there's only one player query, so we can say let pt equals by the table. So player query single, maybe just single. And okay, here we have first analyzer. Turns a single read-only query when there's exactly one. So you have to be sure that there's exactly one. But since it's the player, I'm kind of okay with that. So we can go ahead and do this. And actually, you know, we can do this. So player query single. So these can be simplified. And finally, player position is player query single. And that's. And even here we can do that. So let mutable position equal query single mutable. And there we go. So let's try to run it. And it does not compile. So 94. Right, so this one has to be mutable. And this one has to be mutable. So maybe that's gonna work. and it works as before. Okay. So that's quite nice to know that you don't have to iterate if you know there's only one entity that matches. But anyway, so this one triggers animation, write sprite is component, interesting. So with s, so animation to frame time equals animation timer from FPS. So it looks like it's just resetting the animation timer. And execute animation, what does that do? So, but the question is, how do you change between the two animations? Okay, but in any case, let's see how this works. So there is some kind of texture in here, so maybe we can just grab that. And assets, textures, RPG, characters, and now I lost it, so textures, RPGs, characters, Gabe, idle run. So that's great, just copy that, download that. So we load that, and let me also go here and copy it, and it was called like Gabe. Copy him here. I think we have to make an assets folder. I'm not entirely sure, but we'll see. So we load this thing and we say layout, texture layout from grids. Sprite has 7 sprites arranged in a row, and they are all 24 by 24 pixels. Okay, so we make a vector of 24 by 24. That's what the splat means. There's 7, and I don't know what the 1 is, but okay, that's fine. So then we add this layout into this resource, and then we spawn 2 sprites. Interesting. So execute animation. Animate. Really not sure how this code works. Maybe we should run it. I don't really want to do that. So it just spawns the 2 things, and they have a texture. They have a texture atlas, so animation graphics first sprite index. And there's like a scale, which is interesting. And where is the, okay, it should be this one. This one should be flipped somehow. But I don't see that. Maybe, no. Interesting. Okay, let's try to do something like this. So the first thing we need to do is go to our main function. And I think I will add a separate startup system, and we'll call that setup sprite. Setup sprite. And then we can kind of do things there. So setup sprite. And we'll probably need the commands because you basically always need the commands. And then we also needed an asset server, which is like a resource. And we needed the texture atlas. But actually, let's hold off on that. Let's just we don't need to spawn the camera because we have that elsewhere, but we can say texture is asset server load, and it's Gabe idle run PNG, right? PNG. And then let's try to run that. Let's try to run that, I said. Okay, so what's it saying? It doesn't know what this thing is, which is fine. I guess. So I don't know what the type is, so we're gonna have to do some more stuff. So let layout equal texture atlas layout. So now we probably need this one. Texture atlas layout is a mutable resource, and it's an asset, and it's a texture atlas layout. That's, and this one we were saying kind of worrying that it's wanting me to add some stuff, some like din keyword, but okay. So we have the texture layout is the texture atlas from grid, and uvec2 splat 2471, don't know what the one is, and none and none. So now we can, oh, just like that. Now we can try to figure out what this is. So, it's the number of rows. Okay, makes a lot of sense. Create a resource. Do we need to import something special? No. Doesn't look like it. So let's just keep going. So now let's try to spawn the first thing. So spawn, and it's going to be a Sprite bundle, and it needs a transform. It's the first thing. So transform, and I think it was with scale. We can scale things up. Split. And also with translation. And this, I think, let's put it over here. Okay. And then we need the texture. So I'm kind of assuming that this is like a lightweight thing to clone. Because it's just a handle, that makes a lot of sense. And now it kind of figured out what it was. Anyway, so we need default. And that seems to be that. Then we should add the texture atlas with a layout of probably layout. No, hold on. So we need the texture atlas layout. Texture atlas layout, and that is this one we can call layouts. So it's gonna be this dot add layout, and it's still complaining, so that's not too good. Is this I see the problem. It's assets. Makes a big difference. Okay. Transform, is there a problem? Transform with scale. All right. let's ignore that for now. So we have the layout, which is the texture atlas layout.clone, and probably this is just some kind of like ID. Is again, it's just a handle. So that's fine to clone, and this is an index of animation config. So let's also get the animation configs. This time I'm going to just copy paste. And do we need duration? Why don't I have duration? It's that. So we have that, and then this needs to come from this one. Animation config 1, but first sprite index. And so it's kind of weird that the first one is 1. Is that because he's not running? He's just standing still in the first one? Okay. Allow it. Weird. Okay. Anyway, that is the index. Some kind of complaint here. Expected 1 argument found 3. Ah, it's because it has to be a vector. And this one from scale. From scale. Okay. So that should spawn that. There's also like left sprite, but this is just used to select, so we don't really need that, but we can give it the animation config. Okay, so let's try to get that thing animating, and we can try to run it as well, just to check. And I think you can see it now, it's running. Of course, there's not any sprites yet, but we'll add that now. All right, here we go. So we've kind of spawned it, but we don't have anything to actually render it. All right, so whatever, we don't need that. So I suppose we need something equivalent to this execute animations. But the strange thing is that trigger animation. So this one is just, but this one is resetting it. Ah, no, okay, it is stopping it here. So why aren't we seeing it? That is the question. So it says here, the asset server has a problem. Path is not found. So we need this assets folder, and then we need to move Gabe into the assets. And now if we run it, I think we should see it. So taking some time. Okay, now we see this thing. So that's pretty good. I mean, it means that basically just spawning a sprite will start the rendering. Maybe we'll make it 3 times bigger. That will cause it to render. That's very interesting. You don't really have to manage that. I guess it's managed in the default plugin thing, and it was kind of blurry, right? So that's probably what they added this one for. So yeah, they even say that. So let's add that in our main function. Here, paste that. Okay, so now we don't have blurry sprites. But it was not animating, and we can do something like this. So let's add an animation system. So animate sprite, and I'll kind of put it here next to the setup sprite. So animate sprite. And what do we need? We need to get the sprite, and we need to update something. We need to update the index of the texture atlas, I think. Isn't that what they're doing? So they are getting indeed an atlas. So I suppose we need the time as they do, and we need a mutable query, which is a query, and we need mutable animation config and mutable texture atlas. So it's kind of like hiding some things from you, but I suppose it's very convenient. Yeah, I don't know. Whatever. So for mutable config, mutable atlas in, and then you have to do this thing, right? Isn't that what they're doing as well? Yes. So config and then frame timer. So this is our own type, so we should know what it is doing, and time dot delta. So we can go ahead and advance this timer. And if the frame timer just finished, then we want to say if atlas dot index, okay, if it's equal to config dot last sprite index, then we want to say atlas dot index is config dot first sprite index, okay, and otherwise we want to say plus equals 1, and then we kind of want to reset this, and they do just make, wonder if there's like a reset function. So why don't we just use that? So we reset the timer, and we spawned it with an FPS of 10. So that is very nice. And now we can run it. Now it's animating and it's not blurry. So that's pretty good. But now we should kind of attach it to the player instead. So let's try to do that. And to do that, we should actually, I'm going to zoom out just a little bit. We should probably move it up here, which means we need to include those things in this setup. And we need need to load the texture, and we need to do this thing. So I'm just gonna copy paste it a little bit. I'm gonna write player here. And this is going to be, that was also the player. This is going to be walls. So we just have it a little bit separate. Probably should put in different functions, but yeah, you know how it is. So the player has a material mesh 2D bundle, but we don't need that. We don't want that right now. We actually want to give the player all of this stuff instead. So let me put this here just for now. And this stuff we don't need. And I think it should just work now. The player is a little, or before we had a player that had a size of F32. So here I think we should say we need to scale it up to size, but it already has a size of 24, so it should be something like this. This 24 comes from the Sprite sheet itself. So I think that is basically it. Let's go to the main function and let's remove the second setup because we shouldn't need that now. Let's try to run this. And we should get the, if everything works, we should get the sprite now on the size of kind of approximately one of these squares, and then we can control it. So yeah, it seems like everything worked. But maybe let's now try to stop the animation if we are not moving. So how can we do that? So then maybe we need to use this kind of thing, like input just pressed and things like that. So use Bevy trigger animation. Okay, so use Bevy input common conditions, and I want input just pressed, but I also want input just released. Very nice. So we also have that input just released because I want to stop the animation from running, from playing if you release the button. So I think if we just do it now, it's gonna not work. It's gonna cycle between the idle and the moving animations. So you cannot really see that, but I think it's doing that. No, probably I edited it in the wrong place. So if we do like this, it should work. Or not work, depending on how you look at it. So yeah, you can see briefly it stops, which is not what we want. So we kind of need to, maybe we have like is running, and that's a Boolean, and running starts out at false. And then when we kind of animate the sprite, so here we have the config, and if config running, or rather if not running, then we don't process this sprite. So I think that's kind of nice. And now it should just be a static sprite. So it's becoming more and more clear that we need to look into this hot reloading, because look how long it takes every time. So here you have just a static sprite. All right, so now we can do this thing where we say inside main, we're gonna we are going to say trigger animation like this stuff. So let's just try to do that. So add system, it's gonna be an update system, and we can put it in parentheses, and we can say trigger animation. Well, what should we call it? So we should call it like start running. And this is kind of okay. Let's just try. So start running. We don't need a type thing. So run if, let's add it here. So start running, won't really do anything right now. So run if input just pressed. So here we have a problem because there is a lot of different keys we want to be interested in. So, but let's try. So it's key code, key W, and then what is this? This is returning it's returning a function that can be run. So I wonder if we can combine these things. So what do you have? You have toggle active, stable run condition, toggle in. So wait, so let me see that one. So the example here is toggle pause state. Okay, so we do kind of want to, it is something like this we want. So let me copy that, just have it here as a reference, and then we actually want input just pressed, input just released, input toggle active. That was the one, right? Yeah. Okay, so we go to the main. Where's the main function? Here's the main function. So if the W key is pressed, let's just start with that. Let's worry about the other keys later. So we're gonna start running. Toggle pause state run if. So that's what we want, and then we want an update system that runs something like this. So I'm going to add a system. It's the update, and we're gonna say well, we don't need that actually because we already handled that. So basically what did we do? We did animate sprite. So the animate sprite function itself checks if the thing is running. So we actually don't need that right here. So how do they do it again? Execute. Oh, it was right here. So trigger animation, it just does something. Okay, so we need to say, and has the immutable query, and we need to query for the animation config, and we kind of only need to do it for the player, just to be nice. And then we can say config is query, and there should only be a single one, single mutable. And then we can say config, maybe it has to be marked as mutable. We can say config running is true. And I think that will do it. And this one we can remove. Let's format. And let's try to run it. try to run it. Come on, come on, come on. Okay, so here we're running, and if we press A and D, nothing happens. If we press S, nothing happens. If we press W, it starts to animate. Okay, so that is great. Want to fix one more thing, which is that if we are running, we actually don't want to go back to the first one, which is the idle one. So we'll just do that. And kind of interesting, I think, what do we do if there's multiple types of animations? We could probably add multiple of these things. Maybe not that wouldn't work. So yeah, who knows? Maybe you just have a bigger atlas and you toggle between things in there. All right. So now we need to be able to stop the animation, which is kind of a more annoying thing. So what we can do is we can say stop running, run if input just released, and key code key W, and then that's basically the same. Stop running, except it's with false. And now it should only animate when we're pressing W. So come on, come on. Animating, animating, animating. I release and it stops. Okay, so one more thing, but it's like a small bug. Config dot. No, we also need the atlas, right? That we need the atlas. So we need to get this one, and we need to get the texture atlas. So, and here we have mutable config and mutable atlas. Should be that, and then we say atlas index is 0. We kind of reset the animation. Okay, very good. But now we need to like make this work for all of the keys. And actually this is not, we don't want to do like we don't want to do this. Even if it worked, we don't want to do this. It doesn't work. Because if you're pressing both of the keys and then you release one, we don't want the animation to stop and reset. So how do we do that? Okay, so I was looking around a bit, and maybe it's not really so easy to handle here with this kind of thing. So let's just do it like a kind of a simpler way. Let's say what do we call this system? We call it toggle sprite animation. And this system kind of needs all of this stuff. So toggle sprite animation. And it also needs a keyboard. So we need the keyboard, and it is called, it's a resource button input, and we want the key codes out. That's how I read that. Don't know if that's the way you're supposed to read it. But now we can say if keyboard dot pressed key, what just happened? So key code key W, and now we can say this or this or this or this. And then of course you can abstract this into a function, but let's just see that it actually works. If anything is pressed, and maybe we want to add one that is like, isn't there one that's called just pressed? So we can go ahead and replace pressed, pressed with just pressed. Like that. So if it's just pressed, then we want to actually start things up. So let's do this. And we'll say running is true. And we can even say config.animation. Wait, so this is an animation config, and that has a frame timer. So sorry, so frame timer, and we can reset that. The animation starts fresh. Otherwise, if things are just pressed, we don't really do anything. And otherwise, if I mean, you can this statement you probably don't need. Let's just do it like this. So if we just pressed it, we start the animation. Otherwise, we do this. We stop the animation. Okay. This one, empty. Do we need it? I mean, we can also just say else if not anything pressed, then we do this, and that should be the same. Don't know why I didn't do that. I like that. That's a bit simple, and we run the check every frame, but I think that's fine. So now I can do this, and nothing happens. So clearly there's a bug in the code. So else if not pressed. So if it's just pressed, then that one should not be up there. That was resetting the animation every frame, so that's not good. And now he's animating when we move it. But now we can add some handling for what happens if you're moving left. You can see it looks like he's running right, but we're moving left. So I think we should do something like if keyboard well, maybe we can do it in just pressed. Let's try it. So if keyboard.just pressed, this is actually not really the right logic, but let's just try it. So what I want to do is I want to go into our setup function, and you can see here that no, wait a second. So maybe the sprite bundle has some kind of, it has a sprite, and the sprite has a flip thing. So we can go into the sprite bundle and go into the sprite and then go into the flip thing. Fix that. So destroy wall, here we go. So if this is the case, we also need the sprite bundle. Sprite bundle, so let's get that. Here we say mute sprite bundle. So we got that thing. So sprite bundle dot sprite dot flip x is true. That should be what I want, but this is not Sprite bundle is not a component, even though we spawn it here. Bevy Sprite bundle, a bundle of components. So it's not a component. It's not a component in itself. Is kind of what I'm understanding, but we can do Sprite because that's in the bundle. So that is a thing. That seems to be a thing. So we run it. It takes forever to compile. But here we're running. If I press A, he flips. But now he never flips back. But that's all right because we can do this and this. So we can go in and change things. I think there's still kind of a logic bug that if you press A, I hold A down and then I press D, he flips, but okay, he's also standing still. So maybe that is kind of all right. This logic should maybe, instead of being what is pressed, it should be what is the velocity of the player. But we don't really have that functionality right now. But I think that's it for this video. Just playing around a bit with sprites and seeing what we can do. It's actually kind of intuitive. We just have an animation system. Of course, it needs some kind of like way to keep track of time. And then depending on how much time has passed, we kind of update our position in an atlas, which is also a very common concept that I've heard of before. And we just load the sprites like this. It's kind of interesting that the sprite bundle is getting this texture, and then somehow it knows that there's also an atlas. So that is kind of strange, actually. I don't understand how. It stores a handle to and the index text sections, allowing users to have a single image file for either spread animation global mapping. Change the texture of the atlas to animate. You can change the texture index of the atlas to animate the sprite. Display only a section of the texture. Okay. So that's fine, and it has a pointer to the layout and the layout. But how does the sprite bundle know anything about the texture atlas? That's very peculiar, and I don't understand it. Because there's no... That's very, very strange. But I guess somehow when you render the sprite, it checks inside the entity, is there also an atlas? And then it like uses that. So that's the only way I can understand this, that in the rendering system, which we don't know anything about because it's inside the default plugin, it will see that there's a sprite bundle, it will check and see there's also an atlas, because I should be able to do this, right? I should be able to do that and then just should still work. I cannot just comment this out because there's a lot of like functions down here that rely on it, but in principle, there's nothing stopping me from just spawning a sprite bundle. And in that case, the rendering system doesn't have an atlas and there's really nothing it can do. All right, but that's it. I'll see you in the next one.